Hey, how's it going? It's Keith Townsend from the CTOadvisor.com. We're on the show floor, almost. The business hall is just a couple of hundred feet from us at Interop ITX. I'm joined with a DXC's field CTO,
CTO Application Services.
CTO Application Services, JP Morgenthau. And we're going to talk containerization of monolithic applications yet again. I know we talked about it with Eric Wright, but I want to get as many perspectives on this as possible. So JP, I came around slowly to this whole ideal of containerizing monolithic applications.
Where were you before? Yeah.
You know what? Before I'm like, you know what? That sounds really dumb. Like, why? It works in a VM.
Well, you come from a VM world.
I'm an infrastructure guy,
Yeah.
so I come
And a
from
virtualization guy.
and a virtualization guy. I
Right.
used to be the virtualized geek. So
What's the difference?
there you go. I initially said, you know what, containers made no sense to me. Then I got to appreciate, okay, Linux has some capability or lack of capability that containers fix,
Right.
and that's a great thing for cloud native applications. And then Netflix came out with their Titus project and wrote their journey to containers. And I looked at the efficiencies that they gained from building or taking their monolithic Java applications, putting them inside of containers, and then running it on their internal and external cloud. I'm like, wow, that's great. However, the pushback that I've gotten, and I'd like to talk about the pushback,
Sure.
is that
I was one of those pushbacks.
you were on those pushbacks. So let's talk about you and your pushback. What's the pushback on that?
Well, my pushback was that, we're seeing that containers are so externally represented, right? So very prominent in the representation of what's happening in software architecture today. And
everything should be microservices.
Well, microservices, yes, but it's the containers. So my attitude is that, the fact that containers are prominent is a failure of software architecture. You shouldn't have to see the container, right? The fact that the container has become the thing,
Right.
that we have orchestration of containers and networking of containers, is just a further demonstration that we really haven't moved very far forward in our advancements of understanding computing from what we had in infrastructure. So now we've taken infrastructure and we've taken it a step forward. Now that infrastructure is software defined, right?
Right.
But to me, and Simon Wardley backs this, Lambda, Azure Functions, that's the future, right?
I absolutely agree.
the
Serverless,
yeah.
the server developers are just coding.
It-
There's no context of containers.
Now they can use
servers.
containers. Now
Yeah,
if they find that a container is the appropriate vehicle or medium for them to package that application and put it into a runtime execution mode, that's great.
Right.
But the fact is that people are focusing on that runtime. They're building tooling and they're spending millions of dollars setting up and configuring their own container environment and then building to containers and building automation around containers.
A lot of money. I just wrote an ebook for Nomada about choosing the right container orchestration solution.
Again, it's a failure of the software industry that the fact that this is so prominent. It should be something that you don't see. It should be.
We now see it. So even from a cloud native perspective, your argument is that even from a cloud native perspective, the container should just be a provider. What's the ideal abstraction then for the developer? You spent your whole decade building applications.
That's right.
What is the ideal abstraction for the developer, and what services should the infrastructure team be aiming to? What's nirvana between infrastructure operations and the developer as the consumer?
The app platform, right? I mean, you could think of app servers as kind of, we're on a path where we were headed, right? But the app server platform was really around web-oriented applications, right? I mean, you could deploy Java, but everything around the app server was really about more oriented towards something that was going to be delivered as a service. Not everything, I did a talk today on Cloud Native. Not everything is a service. 12-factor app doesn't mean necessarily Cloud Native. It's a subset of Cloud Native. It was designed for applications that are going to be services. Okay, not everything's a service. Sometimes things are just a workhorse engine. Something that's just computing something.
Sometimes
It's not exposed.
Sometimes it's just a batch process.
There you go.
Analytics. I have billions of transactions that I want to do some AI against.
Right.
It's not necessarily a service.
It's not a service. It's not exposed, right? And you have those, and I think they often get left out in favor of everything, even a microservice, right? You know, I one of the threads I wanted to start, and I'm going to start. I got to aggregate my group. Maybe you feel comfortable, you'd be part of it too, for the discussion around this, right? What do we think about microservices that are daemons? Right, because
I'm not.
What if it's a daemon process?
Yeah.
Is it appropriate to to build it as a microservice? I mean,
I've
really,
often wanted that. Like, if this is the problem with serverless. The concept of serverless is functions. Unless the trigger is the daemon itself.
right. I have this thing that runs on a clock every so often. Now, serverless is different because I hook the timer as an event into the serverless environment, and that executes code. That combined creates equivalent of your daemon.
Exactly.
But the daemon architecturally is gone. It's now an event-based system. I have a timer, I have an event, I have execution. Daemon process says, I run, I go into a loop, and I wait for a time to expire, and then I do something. Nobody sees it. The only thing you might expose is turn on and turn off, right? Right? Think of old Windows services, right? The only interface with the OS was, start, stop, restart.
Exactly.
It did stuff, right? And it sat there and it ran and
it chewed up memory. It used resources.
Right.
Just waiting for something to happen.
So there's cloud native, there's microservices, and then there's the container app itself, right? They're related, but they're three very different animals. So the microservice, should we only be looking at microservices for things that are being built as a service? Big part of microservices is around bounded domain, business domain context.
Right.
So, do we still do that even though the domain is, aggregate the accounts for me, or, do a clearing function or something like that, a clearinghouse function. So is the value there to go and build that, design that, and put it in bounded context, or is it like, hey, it's a daemon process, let's just do it and get it done with, right? Then you have cloud native, and what people think is cloud native, this is another term like DevOps and SOA and even cloud. The ambiguity is ridiculous. You never know what someone's talking about. Look what happened with Microsoft and Amazon recently in the news. In the news promoting that Microsoft's catching up to Amazon and cloud. Well, yes, if you want to realize that that's the market tagging a certain part of revenue as cloud-based, but they're including Office 365 in that discussion.
Which is completely different than...
For us, it's different. For the street, it's not. I don't want... See, people attack that. Oh, come on, let's be real. Hey, to the street, in that context...
It's cloud.
Cloud.
They're not, they're not selling packaged software anymore.
To us, who's thinking about enterprise applications, that's not cloud. That is a hosted application, whatever. It's in the cloud, right? But so SaaS has its place, right? But so cloud native also falls into that same camp of ambiguity. For me, cloud native is something very explicit, and I had my definition in my slides, and it's really around using and having an application that leverages the elasticity of the cloud and the economics of the cloud, right?
So, JP, if folks wanted to reach out to you and find out more, get your thoughts, how can they find you?
Twitter's a great place. I'm always out there at JP Morgenthal.
And you're pretty active on
blog,
LinkedIn?
jpmorgenthal.com. I have a blog. And LinkedIn as well. All
right. And to recap, it's not about the container. Will be the title of this one. It's not about containers. Not the argument about monoliths and containers irrelevant. It's about the application and the ability for developers to create a value from your infrastructure. You want to learn more about the CTO Advisor? You can find me on the web, the CTO Advisor. You can find the blog there as well. And you can find these videos, other content, ctodose.com. Talk to you next, CTO Dose.